Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at the Mammoth Book of Best Crime Comics. This is a massive tome. Look how fat this is, guys. I think this is over 500 pages. Pretty hefty book. And this was part of the Mammoth book series. They had the Mammoth Book of Best Horror Comics, the Mammoth Book of Best like outsider art, indie, arty cartooning, and most of them are pretty terrible. Just grabbing the cheapest stuff they could find to reprint from these various genres. But this one, they got renowned English historian and editor Paul Gravett to edit this book. And he does such a good job because, I mean, it's still on the cheap. For the most part, he's just getting reprint rights from, like, old stuff. There's some Golden Age comics in here. I'm sure they're in the public domain. But, man, this is such a good collection of just various types of comics. It's not really... It uses the term crime comics kind of loosely. There's some stuff in here that, you know, yeah, sure, it's a crime comic, but it's just a brilliant comic, you know. They're very, like, cheaply made, you know, black and white newsprint paper, usually black and white covers, at least this one. Actually, I think the other ones might have color covers. But this is kind of interesting. They do this raised embossed thing for the logo. Kind of interesting. But I was blown away by this. We start off with a beautiful cover by Jordi Bernay depicting his Torpedo character. And let's crack this open. There's a lot to look at. This is going to take a while, guys. Here's a list of a lot of the Mammoth titles. They did lots of prose books, too. And in fact, way more than comics. But they decided to get into this racket in the 2000s. We have the Odyssey here. This was published in 2008. I forgot to mention that. Contents page. I really like that they do this. They have acknowledgments for all the copyrights, but it also tells you what the comic originally appeared in. So this is pretty handy. We have a really interesting introduction by Paul Gravett. Because, you know, Paul Gravett's just a great historian, so this is just a really informative article. This book is really interesting. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I mean, sure, it has total, typical crime stuff, like Secret Agent X9 by Dashiell Hammett and Alex Raymond. But then it'll have, like, El Borbah by Charles Burns and Sinner by Munoz and Sampaio. Very interesting. Speaking of which, I should mention, every story starts with a nice little introduction by Gravett with a short, succinct introduction, which is but packed with good information. So this first one's a real oddball, and also one of the main reasons to buy this graphic novel, because I don't think this is reprinted anywhere else. This is Old Gangsters Never Die, written by Alan Moore and drawn by Lloyd Thatcher. It's from 1983. This was an insert in Alan Moore's... Alan Moore was in a punk band called the Sinister Ducks. I don't think they were really punk, but it came out in that era. And one of the songs, I think on the B-side, is called Old Gangsters Never Die. I think it's a spoken word piece, kind of, with weird music. And he did a comic of it, and that's in the record. So for the first time ever, this has been reprinted, also, like, enlarged and retouched by the artist himself for this edition. So this is just right here, just a reason to buy this book. I was curious, I wanted to mention, too, yeah, these things are like, these were $17.95 in the late 2000s. So this is such a deal, this book. And I'm sure you could find them really cheap used. I think these ended up in the remainder bins, to be honest, a lot of them. So they're probably cheap. So this is a very, a kind of comic only Alan Moore could write. It's basically a poem. You know, it's and we see this nightclub, and this shady gangster comes out and grabs the microphone, and he basically starts saying this reciting this very Alan Moore-like poem. I mean, if you've read a lot of Alan Moore, you know he's got a certain diction. You can kind of tell his writing from a mile away. Old gangsters never die, except the few that pass away in cinemas at midnight, lay there sprawling in the footlights for the usherettes or ice cream girl to find. And if I die, God knows I might. Don't let me die in black and white. So it's all kind of that, Alan Moore writing. It's really good. I kind of like this poem a lot. And I do like how the contrast between this stark black and white here, which is really just, this guy's great. I don't even know who Lloyd Thatcher is. I've never seen him before. But then these memories of the old gangsters are in this, I don't know, what do you call that? Like more gray-toned, more textured and, type art, type black and white art. I love this image of all of the guys that got pushed off of docks with concrete around their feet. So Alan Moore imagines at the bottom of this lake or river, they all look like some statues in a cold submerged art gallery. All these poor guys over the years. I'm going to try to speed through these as fast as I can since this book is so fat. I mean, this might take 2 hours, this video. But just imagine Alan Moore just writing really well. And you can see how good the art is. As the poem progresses, the story progresses, we realize that all the people in this nightclub crowd, they're all like wounded. They're obviously, like ghosts or something. Excuse me. Yeah, that's some impressive stuff. Good looking tone work there. I think that's like Bonnie and Clyde here. And then the gangster leaves the stage, once again saying old gangsters never die. Next, one of the best examples of crime comics in my book, even though I'm not like an expert of crime comics, but we have a torpedo story, The Switch, written by Sanchez Abuli, who created the character and wrote every single one, and Jordi Burnett, who drew almost every one. And this is, if you know anything about Torpedo, guys, well, first of all, feast your eyes on this. Jordi Burnett is just fucking masterful in these Torpedo comics. This is just some of my favorite cartooning ever in the history of comics. And Abuli's scripts are so good, so harsh. Torpedo is just a complete bastard. He's the protagonist, but he's an utter amoral piece of shit. In this one, this corrupt cop takes Torpedo in for questioning. He's torturing him. Of course, Torpedo doesn't crack. He's tough as fuck. And so Torpedo comes up with this elaborate revenge scheme against him with his buddy Rascal. Rascal's in almost every Torpedo comic. It's his little pal, helps him out. He's kind of a doofus. And they find out that this corrupt detective has a crush on this waitress at a certain club. They kind of get their hooks into her, offer her lots of money to help, enact their little scheme. So through this ornate thing, they kind of, the waitress flirts with the detective, and Torpedo comes in and purposely pisses him off. But the main gist of this is that Torpedo gets a gunsmith to make a gun that fires backwards. It's kind of a little silly thing, instead of just shooting him in the back or something. And the waitress, because she's close to the detective, she slips it into his holster when he's got his jacket, up in the coat hooks. So basically, Torpedo pisses him off. It's like a little piece of theater. He does this act, and he knows that he pisses him off so much that the guy's going to shoot him. He knows he's gonna instigate him to try to shoot him. He even spits in his face. Of course, the guy does, and he blows his own head off with the trick gun. So I guess it was a good idea since Torpedo can't be implicated. It's just like, his gun was fucked up. He had a bad gun, so we can't really arrest anyone for it. And of course, a typically cruel ending here. There's one of those, a beggar with a blind sign on, and Torpedo grabs the sign and writes, I bet you have a couple other handicaps as well. And he writes deaf mute. And he puts his gun to his chin and says, okay. He's such a dick. Next we have Joe Simon and Jack Kirby working on both the script and the art. One of their crime comics. They had their own comic company in the early 50s, and they did some really good crime comics when crime comics were very hot. I love this period in Kirby's art. I mean, Kirby's got like 18 stages of his art style. I mean, every 5 years he was reinventing himself. But this early 50s, I don't know how much of it's Simon. That's the thing. Obviously, there's some Simon in here because this looks nothing like Kirby before or since. I mean, obviously it looks a lot like it, but there's definitely differences. This is like a simple crime story. The money-making machine swindlers. And this woman is the narrator, Stella Brady. And she's just a normal woman who has a nice job, a normal job, and she's just sick of working. She wants to just get out of the grind, somehow make a lot of money. She has no idea how. But she's at this resort. She hears this guy pulling a scam on a supposed sucker with this money-making machine. But the guy's wise to him, and he actually beats him up. He's like, you fucking scam artist trying to rip me off. The scam artist has a partner, a woman partner. I guess that's, she kind of lures the guys in. Look at this weird just style. This Simon Kirby, these faces are almost like monsters sometimes. So the scam artist eventually gets the upper hand. And his name's Monty. I'm sorry. I should have said that at the beginning. So Monty, even though this guy's way bigger and kicking the shit out of him, Monty grabs a bottle and kills him. So his female assistant is just fed up. She's like, I'm done with you. I'm leaving. Monty's kind of a wimpy little guy. She slaps him around even because he tries to hold her back. So Stella, our heroine, she runs over there, and she basically gets in on the operation. He's like, hey, I need a new woman, and you're beautiful. I guess it helps to have a beautiful woman help you out to lure men in. And it looks like she's going to be on Easy Street. She quits her job and starts working with the scam artist. Look at that face. Kirby wasn't drawing any faces like this in the 60s or the 40s. Kirby's kind of notorious for never being able to draw a woman who's even slightly attractive. But I don't know if it's the Simon influence, but I think this woman's really hot. Like, he draws her pretty attractive. Look at this guy's face here. This is what I'm talking about. This crazy, just bizarre faces with this weird shading on it. So, of course, things go awry. You know, at first it's all great. It's all free money. Everything's going great. But then, of course, the federal authorities get wind of their scheme. Look at this little, like, Richard Nixon looking guy. It's bizarre. So basically the job, sorry, I should back up. Before they actually, their scam ends, they have to hang out in resorts. They figure that's where they'll meet all the rich people. And she meets this guy. He's some handsome dude. They started a little romance, incipient romance. And then it turns out that he's a Fed. And he's been tracking them the whole time. So Monty gets it. Well, he doesn't get killed, but, you know, they capture him and they capture her. And now she's in jail recounting her tale because crime never pays. And I believe this comic was called Justice Traps the Guilty. Oh, this is a really nice thing, which this is another thing that's worth the price of admission. 87th Precinct, Blind Man's Bluff. Art by Bernard Krigstein. 1962. That's the remarkable fact here. Bernard Krigstein was pretty much out of comics after EC Comics folded. Pretty much by 56, 57, he was just doing painting. But I've talked about this before. You've probably read about this. Bernard Krigstein every now and then just loved the comic form and would try to convince publishers to do, you know, better comics. Let me adapt this novel in comic form. And of course they were all like, no, that's not going to sell. But I guess Dell Comics, you know, their 4-color comics, which just had random things, TV adaptations, whatever. I guess this was a popular book series by Ed McBain, 87th Precinct. And there was even a TV show. So Dell Comics, as they were wont to do, anytime there was a TV show that had any kind of popularity, they'd do a comic book adaptation. And they got Bernard Krigstein to do it. So it's almost like having a small graphic novel, because these things were like 48 pages, I think. Now, I do think this is like not his best work. Maybe because it's just later, or I think it's just because he had a huge amount of pages to do. But it's still so interesting. All the Bernard Krigstein touches he brings to it. So this was like a, typical cop show, even though it started as novels. You know, you got these buddy cops, these cool guys. And they're always ready with the quip while they're investigating. Apparently there's been all this rash of murders. And just Bernard Krigstein just doing so many interesting shots here. But you could, like, look at that face there. That's really interesting. But then some of it is just like, it does seem more slapdash than he normally is. Even look at these backgrounds. It looks really sketched in. But I should have checked how many pages this is. Yeah, this is at least almost 50 pages of comic art. And remember, he hadn't drawn comics in a while. I love these pages of cars speeding through the streets. I never realized before how Trevor Von Eden-like this looks. Trevor Von Eden always draws stuff like that. Well, at least back in the 80s. I think he totally got that from Krigstein. Like, this interesting panel. This car speeding with all this negative space of the tarmac. Just weird little stuff like that Krigstein throws in. Compositional stuff. Love these faces. Just really simple. Almost like Joe Kubert or something, you know. Not a lot of lines. But it looks great. So this is a police procedural at first, you know. It's a little dry, to be honest. Just these cops trying to figure out what's going on. One of the cops says, hey guys, you didn't notice. Look at all the pictures of the victims. Everyone has a self-portrait on the wall. And it turns out it's by this one certain artist. And they realize, okay, he's our main suspect. So it's weird, this main cop here, I can't remember his name. He's like the star, the hero. He has a wife named Teddy. This is her. She's deaf and she's mute. And she's gorgeous, though. And I guess in the 87th Precinct novels and TV show, she always tries to help her husband out. I'm sorry, Steve is his name. She always tries to assist Steve. She's like that typical cop show, like the girlfriend who's always there to lend a hand. So he recruits her, and she basically befriends the artist as an artist model. And he's a kind of weird beatnik type. Look at this page here, though, how Bernard Krigstein this is. Breaking down the panels just into moments of time, really quick moments of time to show motion and stuff. It's like, this is the kind of shit he was arguing with EC about for years to get to be able to do. But I guess Dell just didn't give a shit what he did. They probably just said, we need 50 pages by next month. And I love this, how Bernard Krigstein seems to have had a lot of freedom on this comic, even though he was rushed. And he could do stuff like this. Like, not many comics back then had a page, first of all, of little panels like this with no word balloons or captions. That's pretty, you didn't see this back then. But of course, Bernard Krigstein was thinking this way and wanted to do stuff like this. The editors of comic companies just wouldn't let him because they had their rigid formulas. These crazy sculptures. So I guess the artist used to do sculpture before he got into painting. And for some reason, there's some snafu where the warehouse is like, we got to deliver your old sculptures to your apartment. We don't have room. It's kind of not really explained. And all of a sudden, Teddy is realizing something's odd is happening. The artist seems to be really, like, messed up by these statues, tripping into them constantly, getting very angry at them. Look at all these interesting body expressions here. Bernard Krigstein, it almost looks like he's dancing. Like some modern art dancing. I guess modern art is what I was looking for. And then this is so weird. This is the weird part of the story. So, look at this crazy panel here. It's almost turning into abstract art. But apparently, this guy, she's like, oh my God, he's blind. Which doesn't make sense because he's a painter. And everything he does shows that he can see. Like, she'll lift her arm and he'll say, no, put your arm down. Like, he knows her arm's up. But it's this weird, but she keeps testing him. She waves her hand in front of his face. And she's like, yeah, he's blind as a bat. But then how can he paint me? It's so strange. Every now and then he breaks down talking about for all my success, it all winds up in a pitch black place, an empty blind pit. That's kind of neat there. So he even tells her, he says, I'm blind. And yet he's doing things that no blind man can do. So we find out what the score is. He's kind of ranting and raving. Actually, Teddy's getting quite scared because he's got a chisel in his hand. And he really seems like he's going off the deep end. He says that one day he was hunting with friends. There was this hawk, a really huge hawk, who it almost seemed like he was purposefully competing with the hunters. Every time they had a beat on a bird, he'd swoop in and grab it. So they were like, we got to get this bird. It's like some demon bird or something. Well, especially him. The artist himself was like, he was determined to get him. Look at this breakdown of panels again. And then one day the bird, he was sculpting, and the bird, the hawk, flew down right into his face and seemed to stare right in his eyes. And all of a sudden the artist felt a searing pain. And he woke up blind. But pretty soon he realized that he was blind for the most part. But every now and then he'd have these flashes of light burst in his head. Almost like interior fireworks, he describes it as. Oh man, look at this groovy page, guys. This almost looks like some later Ditko stuff to me. And then strange things start to happen. He actually starts seeing flashes of reality more real than real. It's almost like he's seeing for the first time, truly, when he can see. He's either blind or he has these amazing flashes of clarity and just almost superhuman vision. So that's when he started doing his portrait paintings. And it's true, the way he sees, because every person who got one of these portraits is amazed and astounded. They're like, this is more me than I am. I can't believe how you captured me. So something about this condition of his makes him a better painter. Man, some of these panels are so cool. I also love whoever wrote this story for Bernard Krigstein. Maybe he wrote it. It says story unknown, but it's really just about being an artist. It's almost like perfect for Bernard Krigstein to draw. You almost forget that this is like a crime story. You forget that he's a murderer. It's just like, wow, 20 pages of him talking about his art processes and how he feels about art. Look at that crazy panel. So basically it turns out he is the murderer. He admits it because he's psycho. And so he painted these people so perfectly that he never wanted the people he painted to not look like the painting. And of course, people age and they change their appearance. So in his sick mind, he was like, I have to kill them now. So for all eternity, they match the memory that is depicted on the painting, on the canvas. And then he starts chasing her around with his chisel. Looks like he's going to kill her because he's done with his painting of her. Once again, he doesn't want her to age and not look like the painting. This all seems really crazy that her husband, Steve, wouldn't be closer to the scene, basically sending his wife to hang out with a murderer just so he can get clues. And then it's weird, like Steve, I don't think is psychic, but he almost gets this premonition. He's like, Teddy's in trouble. We got to rush down to the gallery. So they weren't even close to the gallery. They were just hanging out at the station. This part is just ridiculous to me. Once again, I see so much Trevor Eden in this, especially these cars, the way they're speeding along the road. So Steve and his cop buddies burst in the door right in time to stop the artist from killing Teddy. And he's just batshit crazy at this point. Slashing his canvas with his chisel. He's a maniac. He even once more tries to lunge for Teddy. I don't know why they haven't restrained him yet and put him in handcuffs. But they shoot him. One of the cops shoots him. He's not dead, though. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was Deadline Doom. Look, there's like no backgrounds for so many of these panels. I mean, that could have been an artistic choice, but I have a feeling, he didn't have much time. So now he's in the hospital, and once again, the bullet that grazed his skull, he's just really blind now. He doesn't have those crazy flashes. And of course, he doesn't like it. He's just like, just kill me. Send me to the electric chair if I can't have my beautiful vision. But then he seems to have this calm acceptance. And, once again, I should mention, they bring Teddy to the hospital room and allow him to get this close to her where, I don't know, he could have gouged her eyes out or something. So weird. But then at the end he says, the last panel, don't cry, Teddy, because Teddy feels sorry for him. In death I may develop an even greater mode of vision. In death I may really get to see things for the first time, see them how they really are. Wow, that's some heavy shit for 1962 mainstream comics. Oh, this is a great little story. The Murderer of Hung, written by Dominique Grange and drawn by Jacques Tardi in 1982. This was in like Fluid Glacial Les Echo de Savanes, one of those French anthologies. But this was translated and reprinted in Escape magazine, that great English comics magazine from the early 80s. And look at this this Tardi art with all the tone work. He usually doesn't draw like this. It's kind of lush gray tones. This is a nice little story, interesting little story too. This Vietnamese immigrant, Nguyen Thi Loan, and she lives in New York City, and she's befriended this old man who lives in her apartment building. And we find out, though, that they've been working on a project for years. He's been helping her find a certain person. I think he's retired, so he just has time on his hands. So they're basically looking for this certain guy. He's kind of dropped off the radar. And apparently, when she was in Vietnam, she had a baby. When she was a even younger woman, and this American soldier raped her right in front of her baby. Well, a toddler. And when the toddler tried to jump on the back of the soldier, hit him with his little fists, he just shot him right in front of her and then left her alive after raping her. So she wants to find this guy and get revenge. And she told Jersey, the old man, her story. And he's been helping her ever since. So it's just like a procedural. They're getting, they get leads, little clues. They hunt them down, try to find out where this guy is. Here's the flashback to the actual incident in Vietnam. Luckily, they don't show it, actually, just leading up to it. It's an interesting friendship between these two. She even mentions, it's so weird. You're old enough to be my father. And you're the only person I hang out with. Because she's a pretty, she doesn't have any friends. This is her life. She goes to her job and then she looks for this guy. So they finally find him, at least a lead for him at a bar. And the bartender says, he's on the other side of the street. And they find him in an alley. They find the guy. And he's just a total alcoholic. One of his legs was chopped off, probably at the end of the war. He's got crutches. And Jersey tells he says, just give me the gun. Give me the revolver. You don't need it now. Life has taken revenge on him for you. There's nothing left to do here. And they walk away. Which is I just think a really interesting story. It's really good advice. I mean, sure, you want this guy to get killed, and I don't have any sympathy the fact that he's broken. I wouldn't mind if somebody shot him in revenge, but she'd go to jail and ruin her whole life. So I hope she finds solace in that. Oh, this is the king of all crime comics. Murder, Morphine and Me. Script and art by Jack Cole, the great creator of Plastic Man and many other things. This is a classic. You guys have probably heard of this or seen it before. This was one of the comics that got Frederick Wortham all heated up. And it was definitely mentioned in Seduction of the Innocent. Look at this opening page. Just the frenzied nature of the everything. The logo's frenzied and all these little hellish depictions of crime and drug use. And I love this giant needle. This guy's thrusting it into his own chest. It looks like he's in Dante's Inferno. And this is our narrator. I think her name's Mary Kelly. Mary Kennedy. So we see Mary Kennedy looking pretty haggard. And she has this nightmare where this junkie stabs her in the eye with a needle. This was the panel that was infamously reprinted in Seduction of the Innocent. Injury to eye motif. It was even mentioned in the price guide. The comic book price guide would mention any comic that had an injury to eye motif. So she lives in the Stormy house, or whatever, an apartment, and the landlords are this sweet old couple who kind of every now and then look after her, and they're just very nice people. So she's been having these nightmares every night. They run over, because she particularly sounds distressed. She looks like she's jumping out the window in her sleep, and she's yelling, "Tony, Tony, help." They dump water on her, and then she breaks down. And the nice lady, Mrs. Johnson, the nice landlady, she basically says, sometimes it helps to talk. Do you want to? You've never told me about your past. Do you want to maybe tell me something? Maybe it'll help. Look at this beautifully drawn panel here. You can totally see that, he worked on The Spirit with Will Eisner. He probably picked up some tricks. So Mary tells her the whole story, even though it's pretty sordid. She worked at this diner, and she worked for Pops Dominici. I'm sorry, Papa Donici. And he's this sweet man who almost looks after Mary as if the daughter he never had. One day, this gangster type named Tony comes in, and she is completely starstruck. She is dewy. She is swampy. And I really like how Jack Cole shows, like, in comics, it's usually like the male attraction for a woman. She is just she's horn dogging for Tony. She's just totally full of lust for him. And so they make a date. And look at her. Her heart's thumping. It looks like she's going to pass out. She's so, like, turned on by this guy. So their first night out, when she goes to the bathroom, we realize Tony's like a gangster type. He just beats the crap out of these two guys because he recognizes them from another gang. She kind of misses it, so she's not quite sure. She was in the bathroom. But then she basically says, hey, baby, you got to quit that diner and join my business. With a face like that, I need a pretty girl like you. Here's your first week's pay, $100. And she totally grabs him and kisses him. And she quits Papa Donici's. And he's totally sweet about it. He's like, oh, honey, that's okay. You make a lot of money. I'm proud of you. You go make a lot of money. And she's even crying. She feels so bad because he's been like a father to her. So it turns out that her job with Tony, she barely even gets to hang out with them. She basically has to escort these old, weird-looking dudes to dances and dance with them. Turns out it's a front for drug dealing. She's like the cover of this. Because, if the guy's dancing with a girl, they're not going to be like, oh, that guy's dealing drugs. I love this parade of goons. Jack Cole with his great caricature style. This, just all the storytelling, the lettering in this, such outstanding work. I love this comic. This is a really great comic. So Mary figures out the deal. Tony says, you're just you're a friend for my dope peddling. And she's shocked. She's like, Tony, no, dope peddling. I hate you. But she also realizes that she still loves him. She's crazy about him, but she's kind of stuck. And so then this whole story about this gang war, we have this basically a Ma Barker type woman, Esther. And Esther is the other rival gang to Tony, the guy that Tony works for. And they actually attack. I'm sorry. They make an attack on Tony's mob, and in this like little gang war, Esther's husband Maxie gets killed. They kind of ran it together, but Esther wore the pants in the family. Just so many great panels on this. So we're seeing these two gangs fight it out. And then at one point, Tony thinks she's double-crossing him. And just, look at it. He's just a piece of shit. He really doesn't even seem to love her. He's just using her, But I love this when he strikes her here so hard that it looks like her line quality is losing its quality. So it looks like he's about to kill her. And then she basically says, I didn't betray you. I still love you. That's why. You piece of shit, I love you. So he's just like, yeah, I guess you couldn't have cooked up that scheme on your own. You're too dumb. So then there's this like small island that is like kind of beyond the jurisdiction of Mexico and the United States. It's in the middle of the Rio Grande. So basically it's like this crime island. And when they're going there, they get ambushed by Esther's gang, the remains of Esther's gang. She wants revenge for Maxie, her husband. They get Tony, She risks her life dragging him to safety. So now Tony's happy with her. He's like, oh, well, after that, babe, I totally trust you. So they're on this crime island. And she's going to do books for this guy who's like a Harvard professor type, but I guess he likes money a lot. So he got mixed up with these gangsters. So he's like the accountant for the gang, the crooked accountant, and she's his assistant. He's like one of the few people on this little island who's kind of treats her humanely. And then she reads in the paper about how Papa Donici, his son Joseph, was killed by gangsters. He was a city chemist, and Papa Donici was always talking about how proud he was of his son. It makes no sense, really, why the other gang would kill Joseph Donici. She goes to visit Papa Donici. Of course, he's just crying, and she can't really do anything. So then all of a sudden, it seems like the gang is getting all wrapped up. The cops are finally onto him, the federal authorities. They still don't know who the big boss is, though. The whole time, nobody knows who the big boss of Tony's gang is. And then we find out that the bearded guy on Crime Island, who Mary was working for, the crooked accountant, he was undercover for the Federal Narcotics Bureau. And it looks like the jig is up for everyone in the mob now. And then Tony bursts in, sees Mary talking to these guys, and of course, just starts firing away at her. Thinking like, you rat, you turncoat. Even though they just grabbed her, she didn't go to them. They literally grabbed her out of her car and just said, hey, this is the score. And so finally, the federal narcotics agent's telling her about the whole gang. And Mary says, who's the big boss? And it's Papa Donici. Kindly old Papa Donici was the big boss the whole time. And that's why they shot his son Joseph as revenge. And now we come back to the present. And Mrs. Johnson hugs Mary, and who knows? Hopefully Mary will get to redeem herself or whatever. Look at this last panel here, how haggard she is. She looks like she's from the Dunwich Horror, like a half-fish person. They really make the wages of sin look very unattractive. Unlike the rest of this comic where, God, I love this. Almost every panel's attractive. So here we go. We got Charles Burns, script and art. El Borbah, Love in Vain. These were in heavy metal, and then they were collected in that great Fantagraphics book of El Borbah. And if you've never read El Borbah, he's a Mexican wrestler type, but he's a private dick, and he's basically a huge asshole. He just like goes around bullying people and being a jerk. But it seems like he's effective. His technique. So this is great. This guy bursts in. He says basically like, you've got to help me get my son back. His son's not kidnapped or anything, but he can't have children, this guy. So his wife got sperm from sperm and stuff. That's the name of the business. And all of a sudden, in his teenage years, his son is now saying, you're not my real dad. I don't have to listen to you. The wife didn't tell him. There's no reason that this kid should know that. So he's like, somebody's got to our kid. Maybe it's the sperm donor. And he knows his name. So he wants to protect his family, so he's hiring El Borbah. This beautiful, just prototypical Charles Burns art. It's so great. He goes to the sperm and stuff, and a guy working there, he's a really goofy looking guy with really big buck teeth. I think his name's like Skippy or something. Bucky. Or at least that's what El Borbah calls him, because he's a cruel jerk. The whole time he's making fun of his face. Just calling him ugly. It's like, you need a dental appointment. You look like a beaver. Shows how Borbah. He goes to this one house to follow a lead. This woman says, the guy you're looking for, he's in jail, so you wasted the $5 you gave me. And then she says, now beat it, you big tub of shit. And Borbah thinks, I should have dragged her out of there and killed her, but it's getting late. And even 2 panels later, he says, yeah, I should have killed her. He's not a nice guy, Borbah. I remember as a kid getting heavy metal, and, I was like 12, 13. I was buying it for like the Mercenary by Segrellas and the Rare Corbin that have then, like the fantasy stuff. And they would have these in heavy metal, and I was so confused by them. I thought it looked terrible to me, this art. I'd be like, what is this? Look at that guy's face. He looks like a goofy cartoon character. All the stuff I did not like, I remember as a youngster. So then I guess part of his job is he's going to pick up the kid from school one day. And we see this little kid with weird buck teeth. And Borbah says, I think that's the one. But the kid just kind of goes into this van. So Borbah follows him. And the van lets out, and there's all these kids entering into this house. All these kids just got off school. Like a legion of them. And he puts the guard dog in a chokehold. And then when he goes inside, he sees this guy showing weird movies to these kids, kind of indoctrinating them. And it turns out it's the guy who he calls Bucky from the sperm and stuff. And basically he tells this whole story. He's pretty psycho. He thinks he's like the vessel of God. And that God gave him a message that he must, he works at a sperm bank. He's been putting his own sperm in all the tubes so that there's more of him. He's spreading his divine seed. I love this, like, showing him as a youngster. He's kind of lost, listening to sinful rock and roll music. I love the lyrics. Hey, little girl, I'm just tripping on your love vibes. Get your knife out, baby, and stick it. Stick it in my bad booty, baby. For all I know, these are real lyrics, but I have a feeling he made them up. This is the vision he sees from God. How he has to make babies through his perfect, semen and blood. So all the kids have these buck teeth. They all look like him because he's been exchanging his semen for all the other donations. So basically, Borbah's just had enough. He's like, fuck this shit. This is crazy. I'm out of here. I'm just going to go collect my money. And when he gets to the client's house from the first page, the cops are arresting him. And of course he's saying, I've been framed. And he asks the cop, Borbah asks the cop what's going on. And he says, we just busted this guy for selling cocaine and porno to school children. His own kid was the one who reported him. It's the third time this month where the kids have turned in their parents for some major crimes. And all Borbah can say to that is Jesus creeping Christ on a cross. So I guess this guy, the Bucky, is just ordering all of his children to fuck with their real parents, or sorry, not real parents, adopted parents. Of course, we get Paul Gravett makes such good selections in this. So of course, he has a Spirit reprint by Will Eisner. This is a beautiful one with Pagel. And it's pretty funny, though, all the jokes about how Pagel is so hot that guys just go crazy. Look at the art in this. This is very classic Eisner. Let me see what year this is. Definitely has to be post-war. Yeah, 46. This is when Eisner not only was, writing some of the best stories in comics, but his art was really refined at this point. When he got back from the war, he got so much better. There's Pagel. Talk about a femme fatale. This is a typical Pagel tale. She's using men around her left and right, just going from man to man and getting what she wants. There's this guy, a European lawman, a security guy on her tail, kind of teams up with Dolan, says, oh, I need your assistance. I have to get this woman. So this one old couple, Pagel's so hot that the guy gets in an argument with his wife about, like, she's like, you will not give her that money. He's like, I will. And he even shoots his own wife for Pagel. He barely even knows her. He just saw her. But he says that he's got lots of diamonds, so she gives him a kiss. She's a real gold digger, Pagel. I still don't know if it's Pagel or Pagel. So I'm not going to get in this one too much, because one day I will show you guys I have every spirit ever made. And one day that'll be a long-term project on this channel. I'll look through every spirit book. This is a real treat too. I never had seen this stuff. So in the 30s, Dashiell Hammett was a very popular author, pulp author. But he even went beyond the pulps. He was almost like a crossover sensation. And, he wrote Maltese Falcon, all these famous books. And I guess a newspaper syndicate said, hey, will you make an original comic strip for us? Will you write it and create this character? And he did. They gave him a lot of money because he always needed money. I guess Dashiell Hammett was he didn't know how to save money at all. So he created Secret Agent X9, and he got a young Alex Raymond to do the art. This is not way before, but it's before Flash Gordon. So Alex Raymond wasn't a star yet. He was just a guy kicking around the syndicates. But man, look how beautiful this art is, guys. I've never owned this, I don't even know if I've ever seen these. I've probably seen a strip reprinted in a Smithsonian type book or something here and there. But man, this is why Alex Raymond's talked about in such hushed tones. So apparently Dashiell Hammett really wrote these. He didn't have a ghostwriter or anything, I mean, it was probably pretty easy for him to just dash off a few balloons, a few directions to Alex Raymond. I think they paid him like $1,000 a week to do this back then. That's a lot in the 30s. But so impeccably drawn. So here's Secret Agent X9. His name's Dexter. And he's just a typical kick-ass, operative. Lots of scheming, femme fatale women. Once again, I'm not going to get into this whole thing. But it's pretty entertaining. Just, This widow, turns out that her rich husband who died, the fortune wasn't really his, and it might really belong to her niece, this young woman named Evelyn, who we'll meet soon. And of course, it's a daily comic strip. They just every 2 tiers here is 1 strip, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, how awesome it was back in the old days. Because imagine this, guys. So a daily comic strip would be even bigger than this. It was given that much real estate. It's definitely not that way now. I'm just going to basically show off the art. How nice it is. There's all kinds of plot twists and different characters show up. But like most of these daily comic strips, it's just they have to kind of like repeat everything at the beginning of what just happened. So it just have a weird flow to it. There's Evelyn, the niece. She's trying to get in touch with Secret Agent X9. Well, trickiest part for any artist, the hand. We meet this goofy guy. He becomes like a comic comic sidekick, Sidney George Harper Carp. First, we don't know if he's just a grifter or not. I think he is a grifter, but he's kind of a likable grifter. Some panels like this just blow me away. The fashions these women are wearing, everything about it. He dressed women so beautifully. I do like this one main antagonist woman. She's just such a psycho. You can see it in her eyes. She's always just like punching people, slapping people in the face. Like she can't contain herself. Kind of reminds me of my last girlfriend. That's why I think I kind of like her. Just everything's impeccably drawn. It's so amazing. These old-timey guys, they really had to know their craft. Just the scenery, so beautifully drawn. All the duotone shit and zipatone type stuff. Yeah, the story is not that thrilling though. But I wasn't bored. It's not terrible. Here we get some kick-ass action here. Look at that. I just realized this just looks like Russ Heath to me. I bet Russ... Well, I mean, to say Russ Heath like Alex Raymond, almost every cartoonist admired and kind of copied Alex Raymond. It was Milton Caniff and Alex Raymond. Basically, 50% of the cartoonists followed one of them. Kind of like fun fight scenes here. Some great stuff. Oh man, I just love this style. This is a huge chunk, as you can see, which I love. Because I'm probably never gonna buy a Secret Agent X9 book unless I stumble across it cheap somewhere. I kind of want to, though, actually seek one out, though. I could just look at this kind of art all day. Love that. I kind of wish there was more books like this, like comic size, that would just do daily comic strips this way. This looks great to me. Then again, some daily comic strips might have not split it right down the middle, so I don't know. You'd have to cut them up in a weird way. Just fine illustration, really nice. I know I'm going through this pretty quick, so just use your pause button if you want to look at a page a little longer. But I do want to show you every page because it's just phenomenal that he did this day in, day out, this level of quality for months. It didn't last that long, this comic strip. Pretty soon, he got, Alex Raymond got his own strip, Flash Gordon, of course. Also, Dashiell Hammett, Hollywood came a-calling for him. And he went to Hollywood. And I don't think he ever wrote anything again. I think they mentioned that this is the last thing Dashiell Hammett ever wrote. I mean, except for like film treatments, screenplays. I guess published. The last thing that he had, his last of his writings that were ever published are these comic strips. Yeah, apparently everyone loved this comic strip. It was doing really well, but, you know, they can't compete with Hollywood. This really is long. You know, I remember what happened. I just read it last night, but it's like so convoluted. Just like a lot of daily comic strips, you know? So many like reversals of fortune and Little side stories pop up. Kind of like the way he draws the goofy sidekick too. Definitely has like a nice humor style. Yeah, there she goes slapping someone again just for saying something she didn't like. Just like my ex. I like this when they're in the dark here. We get some different shading going on. A lot of zipper-tone on these pages to do the smoke and the dark shading. Another thing about Secret Agent X9 is absolutely no personality at all, really. He's pretty much a cipher. He's just a good guy, the tough good guy. He does have a few quips that are pretty funny. I mean, in that tough guy mold. But, yeah, not a very intriguing character at all. But the face on that guy, it's an interesting face. Just panels like that blow me away. Just that face is so amazing to me. God, this is definitely the bulk of the book. I should have done the math. This is a pretty thrilling sequence here. Crossing this building. All these gangsters who are dressed as cops are trying to take him out. It's all these horizontal panels. It just seems like it would have been such a cool thing. By the time I was a kid, we didn't have shit like this anymore. First of all, comics were about this big. I mean, a little shorter, I guess. And the only continuing daily strips were like really bad stuff like Mark Trail or Mary Worth. I guess Dick Tracy was still daily, but they only had like 2 panels. And of course, no one was drawn like this anymore, because why would you? Your art's shrunk down so much you can't even see it. So they just gave up trying to do like serialized daily strips that were, you know, action-packed cool shit like this. I would have gone crazy for this when I was a kid. You know, I didn't grow up in the 30s or 40s. I grew up in the 70s, but I would have loved just anything with like, ooh, I get to find out what happens tomorrow. Man, I guess I gotta get a book of this. The stories aren't the best, but man, this art I just love. Just like such classic cartooning. So finally it ends. I'm just curious, I want to see how many pages that is. That's a lot of the book. Yeah, it's like over 75 pages we get of that. Paul Gravett throws in a lot of interesting stuff like this where I don't think any of this has ever been translated. This is a story of Commissario Spada, or Commissioner Sword. And he appeared in some comics in I believe the 70s for a Catholic's children's weekly, Il Giornalino. And I don't think anyone ever translated these for an English-speaking audience, but Paul Gravett did, and I'm glad he did, because I never would have probably seen this. Script by Gianluigi Gorano and art by Gianni De Luca. And this story is from 1979, and the story is just called Street. But this guy is a really skilled artist. So we see a street, and the narrator, who I think is the commissioner, is that his name? Yeah, the commissario. This man is buying his daily dose of drugs. This lady leaving the supermarket just shoplifted a pair of socks. These two aren't priests, but con men, scamming old ladies out of their purses. This driver is thanking his lawyer. They've just figured out how to cheat on his tax returns. So we're just seeing this, setting up this street. We're looking at a typical street in Italy. And there we see Commissioner Spada. He's got the weirdest nose. He's almost like the anti-Dick Tracy nose. He's got a, no nose. He almost looks like a shark face, or, I don't know, just really weird. So, and then this is going to be the antagonist of the story, this young man. So, he makes his move, and he snatches the purse from this woman. He runs away. Commissioner Spot is on his tail, trying to find him. So he sees he loses him at this apartment complex, and he overheard the crowd say something like how he was this kind of like a guy who looked like a crook, kind of dirty looking. That's what he overheard. So that's all he has to go on. So we see the crook, and as he's running up the stairs, he sees this cute girl, kind of flirts with her. So when Spada sees her, he says, "Hey, did you see anyone running? A crook, dirty looking?" She says, "No, I didn't see anyone looking like that." And in her imagination, she pictures this, because she thought he was a cute young guy like her. He runs into this old lady, and Spada actually runs into the young guy. He doesn't know he's the crook. He says, "Hey, did you see anybody running away?" He says, "Yeah, I saw him run up the stairs." So, lying, obviously. So he goes up, sees the woman, says, "Yeah, have you seen this guy? A crook, kind of criminal-looking guy?" And she says, "No, I just saw a tall, good-looking, nice young man." Because that's her point of view. That's because one of the person in the crowd said he was short and ugly. So basically this whole comic is just a little comment on how we all see things differently through a different vision, perception. But it's also a fun little story about him trying to get this thief. And when he's right on his tail, the thief throws all the money into the sky, and everyone starts picking it up, and Spada, it slows him down, but he eventually catches him and puts him under arrest. Here he sums up the whole perception thing. I like how he draws each, how different the guy looked to these different people. Kind of interesting, just because I doubt these will ever be reprinted anywhere. Oh, this is another nice thing, guys. Lily White Joe by Bernard Krigstein, writer unknown. This is from 1950. This is when Bernard Krigstein, before he... actually, I'm sorry. I think this could be for Atlas, but he was working for a lot of companies before he joined AC. Really nice. I love this era of Krigstein. I mean, I think he got better, but this 50, 51, 52 Krigstein's gorgeous, too. Just doesn't look like anyone else. Just the line work, the character designs, the composition, just really interesting. So this is basically about this guy. He's a restaurateur, Joe Rivers. And he likes to always think that he's, clean as the driven snow. He's not a criminal. He just owns a business. But he invests in criminal enterprises through this guy. And his name's Mark. So he'll basically be like, okay, I'll give you $5,000. He'll double my money in a month, but I don't want to be involved at all. That's his whole thing. He's not a criminal. And this story is basically going to show that you can't have it both ways. So it works out really well for him. He makes a lot of money through this deal. But then there's a rival gang, and they blow up his restaurant. Because as far as they see it, he's working for their rival. So the rival gang basically takes out Mark and his crew. So they're the bosses now. This is outstanding stuff. Really like this. So this new gang approached Joe and say, you're working for us now. You're going to be investing in our ventures. Look at that interesting panel there. Just the way he draws this rival gangster here. Louis Lugan. Really odd looking guy. And so more and more he gets drawn into actual criminality, you know. And of course Louis takes more and more of the pie. And it finally gets to the point where like Louis feels trapped. I'm sorry, Joe feels trapped. He's like, I'm just a businessman. They can't treat me this way. I'll show them. And he brings a gun to their meeting. And I'm sorry, he's going to skip out of town, but he brings a gun with him in case anything happens. So he's creeping down the alley, and Louis kind of figured he'd be doing that. He's there to head him off. Just the body language here, all of these looks so good. And then he says, basically it's a showdown, and Joe actually wins. Joe shoots all three of the gangsters. And then the cops show up. And so this supposedly law-abiding, not criminal, ends up trying to kill the cops because he doesn't want to go to jail. Another good thing of body language there. Really like that panel. Really interesting composition. And of course, the irony is the cops say, that makes no sense. Why would an honest man like Joe be mixed up in all this crazy business? That's outstanding. Next, we have The Crushed Gardenia by Alex Toth. Art, writer unknown. This is from 1953. Once again, this is from some random Golden Age comic. And this is really, like, Alex Toth really trying some stuff out. Because, I mean, of course, within the next 10 years, he'd draw more and more, like, more interesting like this. But this is some really good stuff. This is like, he's just trying out some interesting shading and, you know, panel layouts and just playing with the comics form. It's a typical crime story, though. We see this little bastard, this kid Johnny. He's really a jerk. He's just complete evil. And he gets sent to what do you call that? Reform school. Because even at 13, he's already doing bad shit. Almost murders a few kids in there. He's just got this uncontrollable temper, this guy. Oh, God, every panel in this is pretty fucking amazing. You know that, like, Jose Munoz was looking at this shit when he was a kid. So he gets out of reform school. He's a young adult. And he gets hired by this guy, Sam Taylor, to work in his garage. Sam Taylor has a beautiful daughter, Ellie. And Ellie kind of has a crush on Johnny. So she always comes to the garage. The dad's all like, oh, I know what you're up to. Okay, go talk to him. So she's really into him. They're going to go to this dance on the weekend. And it's like a square dance. And just because one guy's dancing with Ellie for like a minute, fucking Johnny freaks out and just beats the crap out of him. So this does not impress Ellie. And this rival for her affections, Jack Gale, this nice kid who she used to ignore, she now realizes, oh yeah, he's pretty good. I don't want to be with a psycho. So he loses his job at the garage, of course, and he vows revenge. I love this little panel here. Ellie, 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 Ellie. So he even like tries to like confront Ellie. I don't know. He's probably going to attack her or do something. I don't know. But the father, Sam, calls the police and says, keep that psycho away from my daughter. But they let him off easy. So he's still out in the streets, able to terrorize her if he wants to. Oh, I love this spare stuff. Just all the blacks, the heavy inks. So it looks like Ellie and Jack are really getting along great, and they're even probably going to get engaged soon. And then one night, they're walking in the park, and fucking Johnny comes out with a lead pipe and bonks them both in the head. Even, look at the lettering even, how great it is. 1953. I don't think anyone was lettering like that, or doing sound effects. And so it turns out he kills Ellie. And Johnny was sentenced to a criminal asylum for the rest of his life. Oh, that's some good stuff. That, once again, that's worth $18 to me, owning that story. I never saw it before. This is a Ms. Tree story. This was a semi-popular black and white indie comic in the 80s. It was written by Max Allan Collins, who wrote Road to Perdition, Dick Tracy comic strips, many things over the years, and drawn by Terry Beattie. We looked at Terry Beattie about 6 months ago, his mod comic, Tales Designed to Drive You Mod. I never was a fan of Terry Beattie. I never was a fan of Miss Tree, to be honest. It's not the worst written comic you've ever read. It's kind of like, she's mildly interesting, just the fact that he created a hard-boiled crime character who's a woman, and at this point she's pregnant. She's about to have a baby. So, I mean, I give him little props for that. That's a little interesting twist on the tough guy detective thing. But now it's a tough gal, but it's not that great. And Terry Beattie's art is just not my favorite. Though this is later. This is the stuff they did for DC after the normal black and white run was over. And there are some panels that surprised me. Just certain faces, I'm like, that's a pretty damn good face for Terry Beattie. So this is a typical Miss Tree adventure, except she's like a month away from dropping a baby. So her colleagues tell her, like, you've got to take maternity leave. This isn't good. I'm not really going to get into the nuts and bolts of the story. Yeah, I guess I got to say, Terry Beattie improved from the early 80s to the late 80s. Let me see the date on this, actually. 92. Okay. So this is a decade after the earliest Miss Tree stories that I have. Kind of looking like Betty Page. So it's a nice panel, I think. Classic, just typical cartooning. But this guy, like, look at this. No backgrounds. Whenever he does draw backgrounds, they're pretty sparse. He's not a very, almost like a fanzine artist. But he's, like, yeah, like, he never drew faces like that in the 80s. That's not bad. So I'm glad that he improved. Overall, though, still, this art I find very dull. It doesn't really make me want to read the story. Yeah, I think Miss Tree was in that Eclipse magazine, first appearance, and then went over to Renegade, had her own black and white title, and then that went to some other company, I believe. I can't think right now off the top of my head. And then somehow DC picked him up and gave her a quarterly comic, which had other characters in the backup positions. But I thought it was weird because nobody really seemed to care about Miss Tree. It's like, why is DC picking up this comic that nobody really likes? It's just got a handful of people who are into it. I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments if you like this art. I gotta say it's a lot better than... He definitely improved from his early to mid 80s stuff. But the sad thing is, his 70s stuff is better than all of it. It's like he started out okay, got worse, and then got a little better. A lot of good faces in here. Sorry about this being a long video, guys, but I think I've already reached my record. Oh no, we got 20 more minutes. I don't want to do that though. I don't want to make it that long. But there's a lot to talk about here, of course, as you can see. I'm just going to flip this way, guys. Sorry. This spine is getting a little beat up. Here's another interesting reprint. Probably you'd never find this if Paul Gravett didn't find it in the vaults. Roy Carson and the Old Master. Colin McLaughlin script, and his brother Dennis McLaughlin does the art. It's from 1953. So this was just an English comic book that probably never would be reprinted anywhere. And it's got that nice Golden Age style art. It's pretty nice. Definitely lots of detail. And Roy Carson is just a typical good guy. He's a copper. And this all takes place in a resort town in England. You know, with the boardwalk and everything. And we got this criminal named Dutch. And he's in this city. This got crazy shading here. It's like tartan shading. That's interesting looking. So this is just, you know, I think these were written for kids. So it's a very, not very intriguing world. Not very morally gray or anything. It's just a bad guy, good guy. But it is technically the Golden Age. So, oh, look at that shading there. That's weird. It's like something Terry Austin would do or something. This is, I'm sorry, I was saying something. It's just like typical Golden Age comic where it is like, yeah, 4 years later, I'm sure this story wouldn't be allowed to be printed. If it was American, you know, Comics Code type stuff. Just because it does have some gangsters like wielding guns and smacking people in the head. Yeah, this guy's a very solid artist. Kind of like it. There's another nice darkly lit panel. Looks great to me. And not very exciting. Even like Dutch's whole plan is, you don't really care. This is really interesting. It's called Mary Spratchett, Writer and Artist Unknown, from 1949. This was published by Fox Comics. That was like the bottom tier of the comics publishers. They were Victor Fox was the owner, and he was a real turd and paid his artists nothing. And this comic is amazing how like the lettering just goes really askew. Like they really were, I think, were just cranking out product. They didn't really give a shit. But this is a pretty exciting story of just like this horrible woman. Basically, she's married to this guy, pretty well off, but he's always working so much that he won't take her out in the town, won't go to nightclubs with her. She's disgusted with him. She basically hates his guts at this point. She wants to get rid of him. So she meets this smooth contractor guy, because she goes out by herself all the time. And they kind of strike up a relationship. And like in all of these comics and film noir books, she convinces this guy to help her kill her husband. So they cook up this elaborate scheme. This art's not terrible. It was pretty damn good, actually. I mean, Golden Age. It's not bad. So like I said, they cook up the scheme. They get away with it, but they're kind of on the run. The cops kind of know it's them if they have to skedaddle. So, but they got tons of money. So they basically go on this trek across America, staying in little resorts for a month at a time, kind of hiding out. But they got money, so they're very comfortable. But more and more, the paramour, the contractor guy, he's just like, God damn it, why do we have to kill your husband? He's really starting to regret it. He's also regretting that he can't just do what he wants to do. He's cooped up all the time in these weird little cabins. So it gets worse and worse. And eventually, he can't take it anymore. He's just like, why did I listen to you? You ruined my life, you murderess. And she's just totally berating him, chopping on him. So he just ends up strangling her, attempting to. And then the cops come and arrest them both. And she ends up in the electric chair. And this one I thought was more fun just because these characters are such scumbags. She's so evil. She shows no remorse at all. Once again, look at this. We get an Alex Sinner story by Carlos Sampaio script and Jose Munoz art. This one's called Talking with Joe. And this is like almost like Sinner's origin story. Look at this beautiful stuff. Jose Munoz influenced so many guys. I won't even bring up Keith Giffen this time. I'll keep it to myself. Oh, man. I can't believe just how abstract it is, and yet it works so good. That looks like some haggard old face. But really, it's crazy. It's just a bunch of slashes. Horizontal slashes. So Alex Sinner's in this cafe. Oh, I love these 3 panels. Look at this beautiful work on the face there. And I guess the guy who works at this cafe, he's closing up for the night, and he kind of knows Alex, so he's like, yeah, let me join you for a drink. We'll chat for a while. That crazy shading there. Crazy inking. And basically, Alex tells him about his life when he was a cop. Because basically, for most of the past 10 years or so in his life, Sinner has been a private detective, but he was once on the force. And he paints this picture of a really corrupt police department, and he was the one who wouldn't go along, who wouldn't play ball. He was kind of the goody two-shoes. These great scenes in New York City. Jose Munoz at the time had never been in New York City, and I think Carlos Sampaio had not been either. God, almost every panel is a revelation in here. And this is like, what, 75, I think I said? Like, this must have just blown people out of the water. These crazy characters. Oh, it's so fun to look at. So he's just recounting all those stories of even the chief of police comes to talk to him and is like, come on, play ball with us. You're making us look bad. Look at the crazy shading on this. It's amazing stuff. The inking, I meant to say. Oh, so good. This spine is getting a little too cracky on me. I'm worried. And I guess back then when he was a cop, he lived with his sister. And one night, right outside of her own apartment, their apartment, she gets raped by these 3 guys. So, of course, Alex Sinner's on the warpath. He's basically going to try to find these guys. Because he knows that the police are so corrupt. He's like, they're not going to find these guys. So it's getting to the point where he's getting into physical altercations with his fellow officers in the locker room. At one point, they're beating him up. He pulls a gun on him. It's like a bunch of cops beating the shit out of him in the police station. And he has to pull a gun on him. And the commissioner comes in, happens to be there that day, and says, this is not working out. So they keep demoting him, putting him in lower duties. I love this street scene. Look at all these insane people. Look at this guy, looks like an alien. It's not even a human being. And so they busted him down to the morgue, and he lasted 1 week. And that was the end of his police career. So he has to be dismissed from the force, and ever since then he's been a private eye. But he says, at least now I can look at myself in the mirror. This is really nice. It's called The Button. Art by Bill Everett. Once again, writer and unknown, 1950. And, of course, Paul Gravett, being the great historian, knows to include something from the Lev Gleason comics, Crime Does Not Pay, which started the whole crime ball rolling back in the 40s. Even when nobody was doing crime comics, they were the only one with Crime Does Not Pay. But it sold a lot. And it took like years for them to say, hey, superheroes aren't selling anymore. Well, I'm sorry, the other publishers to say, superheroes aren't selling anymore. Let's do this crime thing that Lev Gleason's been doing. You guys, this art is so nice to me. Fucking 50s, wait, am I right? Yeah, 1950 Bill Everett. I loved this era for him. He was just so good. And this is a very like EC-like crime story. This could have been in crime suspense stories. It's more about the psychology of the criminal. Look at every panel here. Just the lushness and the... this looks so good. I love this. Basically, this criminal keeps hearing stories about how the smallest thing can get you caught for a crime. Like, you left a matchbook somewhere. Or a little tiny, whatever, some tiny thing. The cops find it and bust you. So he hears these stories, and then he's broke. So he's like, I gotta get some money. So he mugs this guy. He's kind of a drunk guy. He's a lovable drunk. And he mugs him, and then he realizes there's a button missing on his coat. So, of course, all he can obsess about is like, maybe I left a button at the scene of the crime. That's how they'll catch me. That's how they'll catch me. So he goes through this whole crazy thing of moving the body to a safe space so he can inspect the ground and trying to get this hobo to help him out. It's just so weird. He's obviously becoming obsessive about it. And he probably would have gotten away scot-free, but he's still at the scene of the crime. The cops show up and arrest him. And they basically tell him, like, yeah, you would have totally evaded us if you just didn't care about that damn button. Every panel in this looks so nice to me. I need more Bill Everett stuff. Here we have a Paul Grist Kane story. This was a long-running black and white comic that Paul Grist wrote and drew, and it's just about a cop in this mythical city called New Eden. This one's called Rat in the House. I really like Paul Grist's style, especially the way he lays out panels on a page. I think he's really good at designing pages, and it has this very simple, designy art style. But this story, I mean, it just seems like they took an issue of Kane, so I was a little lost. Then again, I could just be dumb. but there were some things in there I didn't quite understand the plot, but every page was fun to look at. I mean, the plot isn't that abstract, but things would jump to a certain thing where I'm like, wait, I don't know what you're talking about. But maybe it's because I don't know Kane. I think I have one graphic novel, like the first 4 issues of Kane. Paul Grist is English, of course, and he also went on to do Jack Staff, the English superhero. It's a very Paul Grist page. It was just like cool angles like that. This is basically these 5 cops take out a guy, and then there's some questions, so they all have to be interviewed by internal affairs. The villains in every police movie. The evil men who just want policemen to follow the rules and not break them. That's a pet peeve of mine. In all the cop movies, internal affair guys, they even cast actors who look weaselly and look like villains. It's like, guys, internal affairs is really important. I want them to do their job. They're not villainous to me. But every cop movie makes them seem like the bad guy. They're trying to fuck with these honest cops. So it's interesting panology. Panology. I do like this sequence where the 2 guys are arguing. This mouse is watching. He's watching a ping pong game. And then this cat just rips him out of the panel and eats him. Oi. So this is basically all the cops telling their version of events to the IA guy. His name's Rats, of course, with a W. At least they don't draw him to look that odious. See what I mean about these beautifully designed pages? I love this, like, whoosh, and then boop, boop, boop. There's another one of those angled shots. It's always from some weird angle above, near the ceiling somewhere. I should look at that Kane graphic novel soon. This is interesting. Crime Does Not Pay, those Love Gleason titles, they used to have this whodunit feature where it was basically a story, a mystery, and the reader would have to try to figure it out before the conclusion. So this is art by Fred Gardenier, writer unknown. This is from 1948, from Crime Does Not Pay. Once again, I just love this kind of simple golden age art. Like, everything's just perfect, very tight. This is a pretty good one. It's obviously they're trying to cram this huge mystery and all the clues into one story. Look how much letters are in every word balloon and caption. It's almost crowding out the art. But it's a pretty good little whodunit. These really evil women, and they get murdered, and all these people have a very good reason for murdering them, because these people are horrible. But just really like this. Nice art. It's so weird how, like, I mean, technically, I would never say, like, oh, guys, Fred Gardner is such a great artist, but I just love looking at this, like, simply composed and drawn art, like, from the Golden Age. It's just like, this looks so nice to me. Even though he's not doing anything special. And technically, it's not even that well composed. Like, there's ambiguous alignments there. Like, this guy's cheek is right up against this woman's head. Like, a better artist would have, like, separated it, or so it wasn't ambiguous. Yeah, I can't get into the whole mystery, guys. It would take add another 5 minutes to this video. And I like this. The last page, you get to here, and then it says, flip the page and find the answer. And here's the whodunit. Yep, it's the maid, just like you figured. Next, we have Mike Lancer and the Syndicate of Death. This was Mickey Spillane's one of his early comic scripts. He was doing like little things for the comic companies, the Golden Age comic companies, and he was trying to sell them on his Mike Danger idea. No one thought it could carry a title. You know, everyone just wanted superheroes. But he did convince, Green Hornet Comics from Harvey. They at least published his Mike Lancer. I don't know why it wasn't Mike Danger. They published a short story by him in 1942. So this is Mickey Spillane writing, way before Mike Hammer, before he was famous. And Harry Sahle, S-A-H-L-E, drawing. The art's really got this crude vitality to it that I really like. And this is very much like Mike Hammer. This guy's a total, just brutal man. But this looks good to me. It's just the panel layouts. Look at this gnarly looking dude with his bloodshot eyes. It's almost like Graham Ingles. So it's the typical template though, you know. You know, he's got his little office. A beautiful woman walks in, says, I need your help. That's pretty nice. And so he's on the job. He's going to help out this woman. And he just goes around just brutalizing people. That's just, his detective skills are basically just going around and punching people. And he grabs this guy by his ankle and just whacks him against the wall. The corner, no less. It looks like it says Marty's spine snaps. He breaks his spine on a wall. How about this weird panel of him? His silhouette? It looks kind of like something Hilary Barta would draw. Like kind of funny, you know? It's like Bigfoot cartooning. Yeah, this is some nice stuff. I could read stuff like this all the time. I guess it's from how I grew up, loving like Fangoria magazine and stuff, but it really does. Violence does really seem to make things more exciting to me. It's sick, I know. But the fact that he's so violent, it makes this not as boring as some other Golden Age comics. Pretty nice. Well, another thing probably you would never see reprinted anywhere. And now we actually have Mike Hammer. So this is now 1954. I, the Jury, the first Mike Hammer novel, came out 4 years previously. It was a huge success. So a newspaper syndicate asked Mickey Spillane to write a comic strip about Mike Hammer for their syndicate. And he did. It lasted a few years, but apparently it was too violent and saucy. And it eventually got, I wonder if I can do this. I'm really worried about the spine, but nah. I want to just go slow. So, I'm sorry, these were Sunday strips. There was a daily, I think, but these are the Sundays. So I guess, you know, that would be a Sunday, shrunken down. And I think I forgot to mention, I didn't tell you who drew this. A guy named Ed Robbins, who I guess was a long-time newspaper syndicate artist. You know, he'd been around. So this is definitely it looks like a newspaper comic strip. But I don't know, I prefer that like Golden Age art more than this. This is kind of sanitized looking to me. But Mike Hammer's pretty brutal in this. Not nearly as brutal as Mike Lancer. But he's definitely not, doesn't take shit. So once again, you know, very typical type, you know, this beautiful redhead. Mike Hammer's helping her out. She's in a jam. I like the way he draws the woman, though. That's kind of nice. It's like that Stan Drake school of newspaper cartooning. My camera's not good looking enough to be part of the Stan Drake school. They really give him that like boxer's nose. So he looks like a tough guy, which I'm glad they did. I don't want to see no pretty boy be Mike Hammer. I never read Mickey Spillane once in my life. I never really had the urge. They seem kind of dopey. But I hear, some people really like them. They're supposed to be kind of entertaining. I don't know why this, but I really love this panel of the ransacked apartment. Excuse me. Need some more water. It was kind of nice getting a full Sunday page. It looks pretty good. I'm sure they shrunk it down. Then again, I don't know. By the 50s, I don't know how big the Sunday comics were at that point. I know the early days of comics, they were the full size of the newspaper sheet. That's a great panel there. Mike throws this guy out the window. I love that. Just the silhouette. So yes, it's lots of plot twists and turns. It's all these like film noir, gumshoe, hard-boiled guys. It's like they got like 3 different stories to tell, and this is one of them. Yeah, and also in these comics, like Mike Hammer's also like kind of a dick to the ladies too. He's kind of a love him and leave him. I guess some might say a misogynist. Some nice action panels. It's like Carmine Infantino almost. Oh man, this is going to be so long, this video. Will this book ever end? I say that like I'm complaining though, but I thought this book was just so fun. Like, I'm glad I own these Mike Hammers. It's not like I'd ever buy this book, but it's kind of interesting to see this strip I've never seen before, and this Ed Robbins guy I've never seen before. Okay, now we have... Well, okay, guys, we saw this a few months ago. This is a reprint. The Court. Neil Gaiman script, War and Police Art, 1996. So this is from that book, that anthology, It's Dark in London, which we looked at, I think, a month or 2 ago. You can find it, just scroll down a little, you'll see it. So I'm not going to really get into it because we just talked about this like a month or 2 ago. But suffice to say, it's a great story. Beautiful War and Police Art, as you can see. It almost looks like this is a little smaller than that book. Maybe, no, it's probably not. It's probably my imagination. But the lettering looks so small in this. Not too small, just small. And, yeah, this is a great story. Suffice to say, it's Neil Gaiman. And love War and Police's art. So I'll just give you a little glimmer of his beautiful, interesting, quirky art style. See, I imagine he's more from the Milton Caniff school. War and Police draws more like that than Alex Raymond, with all the feathery lines. He's more about the... Police is more about the chiaroscuro. I gotta learn how to say that word one of these days. Chiaroscuro? Now we have, see, once again, Paul Gravett knows his shit. So if we're doing crime comics, we definitely have to have an example from EC's crime suspense stories. And of course, by Johnny Craig, since he edited that comic and he drew the lead feature, and he was known for being the crime artist at EC. And so this is written and drawn by him, 1951. The Sewer. And This is just a great EC story and beautiful Johnny Craig art. Look at this. That opening, that is impressive as hell. So, of course, like most EC stories, we see a guy in a jam and then he says, how did I get here? Let me tell you. Very typical crime story. This woman, her husband's a jagoff, and she's kind of in love with this other guy anyway. So instead of just leaving him, of course, she has to kill him. God, I love this art. In this instance, he's the one who convinces her. He's the one who's like, yep, you can't just leave him. We got to kill him. So they do that. They lure him. He's really drunk. He's a drunkard, the husband. They lure him up to the bathroom, and he kills him. He basically just bashes his head in with his bare fists. Look at that amazing panel. Just getting rid of the border panel. That looks so good. That's another great one, too. So basically, the wife, they're going to dump his body in the sewer. And all of a sudden, the wife, like, I guess has been in shock the whole time. And she finally just, like, snaps out of it and realizes what she's done. And she's like, Dad, good God, he's dead. We murdered him. What have we done? She starts freaking out and just, like, starts running and screaming. And he's like, shut up. You're going to get us all caught, you know? So he just lets her run away because he's got to deal with the body. So he throws the body in the sewer. Then, basically he's planning to go to the police station because he read in the newspaper that she turned herself in. Luckily, she's babbling so incoherently, she hasn't pinned him yet. She's just ranting about someone's dead, murder, death. So he's going to go in there. He figures he can sneak his way into the cop station and take her out. This guy really is an evil piece of shit. And when he gets home, apparently she has spilled the beans, And the cops are waiting for him. The cops are chasing him all around. It's raining. And finally he's cornered in an alley and he sees a sewer lid. He climbs down into the sewers. Pretty soon, quicker than he thinks, the water's getting really high. He's starting to panic. But then he makes it to this one little room where it's like, it looks like the water's not rising anymore. It'll probably go down soon. And there's this one, pipe where the water goes through. So he's staying away from it because he doesn't want to get sucked in. And then all of a sudden, he sees the body. He lights one of his few matches that he kept dry, and he sees the body of the husband that he just killed. But he doesn't grab it or anything. He, pulls away from it. It's like, But then the body floats slowly towards that pipe and gets stuck in the pipe, and then the water rises. I love that panel. Look at the body language there of him drowned. Oh, so good. So then actually, guys, I just want to show you this page again. Just look at this. It's so good. Everything about it. And these 3 panels, too, are just amazing. So then we see the 2 detectives who were at his house. And they're like, I don't know what happened there. Where'd that guy run? We were just there to warn him that his crazy friend had escaped and threatened to kill him. And now we'll never find him, I guess. So that's, of course, EC always has to throw the ironic twist in at the end. And now, once again, guys, we have I Keep Coming Back, written by Alan Moore, art by Oscar Zarate. And this was in It's Dark in London as well. So I'm going to just flip through this quickly. Let you see the great art by Oscar Zarate. Suffice to say, it's Alan Moore. It's really well written. And it's really beautifully drawn, as you can see for yourself. So if you want to see this more in depth or hear more of my inane ranting about it, find the It's Dark in London video. Shouldn't be more than 2 months old. Then again, I lose all track of time. But it wasn't that long ago I did it. Oh man, I do want to reread this again right now, but I think we're pushing the 2-hour mark. This is definitely a record for us at the Academy as far as lengthy videos, but this is by far the fattest thing we've ever looked at. The biggest thing. Oh man, look at that. It's about to fall out. So there you go, guys. The Mammoth book of best crime comics. Highly recommended, especially because I'm sure you could find this for nothing. It was freaking cheap when it came out. $18 for all that amazing comic stuff. If you don't like, I don't know, a bunch of them, I'm sure you're going to like the other ones. And this is like not even as valuable to me because some of the best stuff in here I already own. So if you like don't have a huge comic collection, this is what a great primer to like catch up and learn about, you know, Munoz and Sampaio and Charles Burns and Alan Moore and Will Eisner. It's just a really good book. Kudos to Paul Gravett. I give him all credit because the other Mammoth books look pretty crappy. So hope you guys like looking at it. Hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.